point onwards will be recorded. Just going to pop back to my presentation. So we are focusing on Skype in the classroom. If you are a Google school, Skype in the classroom is something that's going to be a little bit more difficult to use. So we've been saying this at the beginning of each of our sessions. Mostly as a school, you will either be Google G Suite or you'll be Microsoft Office 365. So Skype in the classroom sits better in Office 365 and works with all the other features that you've got in things like Teams. So you can use it, have a go at it if you are a Google school, but bearing in mind it might be more difficult to integrate it with your current setup. As I've said, mute your mics, also turn your cameras off. Any of you that aren't familiar, that meetings bar that was hovering over there, the microphone button, if you click that, you'll get a line through it that stops your audio. Also, you can do the same with your video camera, your built into your laptop or your tablet device, and that will also switch it off. So today's agenda really is this. We are going to take a deeper dive into Skype in the classroom. As I said, it is a newer part of the Microsoft offering, but I'll explain first of all how you can join Skype in the classroom. Then we'll have a look at the events that are going on there, anything like virtual trips that you can take part in, and also how to use it for collaborative purposes in your school or with other schools. Questions can be asked at any point. As I said, just pop them into the Microsoft Forms link in the chat on the side of this Teams call. So when you get around to using Skype in the classroom, the first thing you're going to need to do is set yourself up an account. You can only set up an account if you've got what's called an MSA or an Office 365 account. So you'll need to have a paid for Microsoft account. So if you are a G Suite school, you can't use your Google account to sign up. You're going to have to get a paid for Microsoft account to get into here. If you are an Office 365 school, it will be free because with your school Office 365 account, you can just sign in using your normal email address that's been supplied from school, and then you sign in with the password on that email address, and it will work seamlessly, as they say. I've already got a profile, so after this event, you'll get the presentation as well, or you'll get the versions of the slides. So you can also visit me. I do offer to do Skype in the classroom lessons. As yet, I've only done a few, but you can also use that link to book me if you wish to get me into your school or you want to get me to talk to anyone. Just for a bit of background, I am an ex-teacher from the UK, so I've taught in primary, middle and secondary and all the way through to leadership of the school. So I'm more than happy to work with most phases. My background is STEM, so I covered a lot of science and technology areas, including computing. I wanted to also emphasize that Skype in the classroom is currently in development. It's in what's called preview. So preview means that Microsoft are happy for it to be released and people to start using it commercially, but you have to take on board that it is something that they will be tweaking, they'll be adding to, and they'll be moving it around a bit from time to time. So just be prepared for change. Make sure that you get used to the fact you might come in and the buttons move slightly or a page is arranged slightly differently. Don't let it throw you. If you think you are someone who's bothered by that type of thing, then it might be worth just quickly opening it up the morning before you want to use it or the afternoon before you want to use it and check. The other thing I would say is because it's of its nature and it's in development, it's in beta, it's being added to, explore a lot. They keep adding in extra features and extra resources, and Skype in the classroom is quite resource rich, which is why we're not going to supply any additional resources beyond the presentation today, and I'll show you where to find those resources. When you come to create your Skype in the classroom, we will then use that to look at how we use the features in Skype in the classroom. So without any further delay, I'm going to jump out of the presentation. I am going to go across over here and I'm going to sign out of an account I'm already in. And I'm going to sign out there. And what we'll do is we'll go and sign back in. So when you get to Skype in the classroom, let's do it all the way from the beginning. Search on the internet. You'll arrive somewhere that looks a bit like this, and you want to scroll down to where it says sign up for free. Click the sign up for free button and you'll be presented with a Microsoft login box. This is one account I've used, but I'm going to use a different account for the purpose of this demo. And I'm going to paste in my normal email address that I would use for school. This is a slightly unique one because I'm using a demonstration email address. I press next and then pop in my password for the account. Here's my first challenge of the morning. Can I remember my password? I can. It will then bring you to this box. Unfortunately, if you want to use Skype in a classroom, you have to give it certain permissions to access parts of your Office 365 profile. There's nothing sinister in that. There's nothing to be worried about from any safety or safeguarding point of view. It just means that Skype in a classroom can use the features in your email address and your Office 365 seamlessly to provide things like your video camera or your microphone or information from your profile, which you'll need to build up your profile in Skype in the classroom. So just press accept. It will then have a little whirring moment and it will take you into setting up your information. Now, setting up your information is really key. I wouldn't normally labor this quite so much, and I haven't done in any of the other webinars that we've had, but you need to make sure that you get all of these details set up correctly. Later on, you'll see it's important because if you set, for instance, your country incorrectly, you will end up with, so I'm going to put Oxford because I'm near Oxford currently. I'm going to find Oxford, United Kingdom. If you set up, for instance, here that you, by mistake, put Oxford, Mississippi, USA, it will set your time zone for America. And then when you join any classrooms, it will give your availability on American time, whichever state you're in. And then you'll think that you're available during the day in the UK, but actually to everyone else who's looking at your Skype in the classroom profile, you'll be available in the middle of the night UK time or early in the morning. People are going to get frustrated with you. So make sure that you set up your location absolutely correctly. And that helps later on when you come to use it. Skype profile, you don't have to put that in, but if you use a Skype profile, you can pop it in there, register, and you get presented with these two. You can volunteer. So maybe you're on this call, you're a governor, you're a retired teacher, maybe you teach part-time, or you can volunteer to give lessons on Skype in the classroom. Maybe you're passionate about something, maybe you've got expertise. I warn you now, Microsoft will vet you and you will be checked for things like safeguarding purposes to make sure you're reputable, to make sure you've got a background in what you claim you've got, but you could volunteer. But most of us are going to go connect with my students in classrooms because we are using this for teaching purposes. So it's the option on the left. Press continue. You get your one last step. And as with everything in life, you've got to sign the terms and conditions. So you can say, I'm joining Skype in the classroom. I've read and agreed to that. The one that you don't have to tick, and if you don't like to get bothered with spam, don't tick the bottom option because otherwise you're going to get a lot of emails about Skype in the classroom. If you're someone who thinks this would be quite useful to be notified of new activities going on or events that are in your area, then tick it. It's personal preference, but most people don't want to be spammed. Press continue, and then you get thank you, turn it on for me, and it can show you then here's the basic information that I've set up. The next thing you're going to need to do is set up your classroom. So just like you have a physical classroom when we eventually get back to them, you're going to have your Skype in the classroom for distance learning and projects. You've also got your collaborative projects that you might be involved with or that you're going to offer, but I'm going to show you first of all adding a classroom. So you press that. You can have an image here. So if you want to personalize it to your school logo, you want to use some branding of some sort, you pop it up there and then it appears as a banner at the top. Tell us more about your students. So name of your classroom. So I might call this Turn It On Demo Classroom. I'm going to choose my subjects. So you want to notify people as to the main subjects that you're interested in or the main subjects you could offer. I'm going to put computer science because that's one of the things I'm in there, but you should, unless they've changed it, and this is what I mean about finding out, I'm going to go down to the sciences. You should be able to offer more than one subject. Now that still works exactly the same as it had done. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to put in there, let's have some digital literacy as well. So that's me. Then you need to give a little biography, really. So what do you and your students want to learn? We would like to connect with other STEM communities. If you've got previous YouTube videos that you've recorded, maybe your school has a YouTube channel, you can click that button there type in the URL from your YouTube channel, and then they get embedded on your classroom page. So if you've already done some of these, or you've recorded an amazing video, maybe you've done a science project, maybe you've been looking at Coke and Mentos and rockets, and you've videoed that. Obviously, be careful from any safety point of view and safeguarding. Don't video the faces of children, and also you should have consent if they're going to appear in any videos. So I would urge you to video the focus of the learning, be it the experiment or the activity. If you are going to do anything with children, over the shoulder, backs of heads work much better than faces. You can then also add images. So if you've taken some pictures of what you've been doing, you can press the plus there, and you just drag in from your computer, and then you press this turns to OK, and it will upload it and put it on the side. Down here, you can select the languages you offer. So if you are multilingual, you can drop that down. You can choose other languages that you speak. So for instance, if you were fluent in Spanish, let's go down. There we go. I can then say that I can deliver classroom lessons in English and Spanish. Number of students, just to give people an idea of the sort of class size they're connecting with. So I guess most people are either going to be 20 to 30 or 30 to 40 for a UK class size. Let's say 30 to 40 to have an honest point of view that unfortunately class sizes are quite big. Average age of students. So you want to narrow it down. If you're working from a primary age, you might say, look, we only go up to 10 or 11. If you're working with secondary, you might say it's 18 plus, and you drag the bottom line up to say that we're going to go from 11 to 18. So I'm going to say that I'm working in an all-through school, and I'm going to go 11 to 18 because we're quite inclusive. You could also add links, for instance, to your school's web page. If you press that, goes add a link, and then if you were going to say, I'll put in our company one. Oh, I really can't type this morning. Ooh, doesn't even like our URL. Probably wants an HTTP. There we go. That makes it happier. And then you press continue. And after you press continue, you then get to this calendar. This calendar is really important. So you can see why I'm actually bothering to walk you through the setup here. You can change the view of the calendar to be 1 day, a week, or a month, depending on what you require. You will also get notification here. If you've offered to deliver lessons to other people, you'll have requests. So people can put in bids or requests for your time. And it may be that you work as a class. It may be that you work as an individual professional, as a teacher offering to go and join another class. You'll decide that when you discuss the requirements of the request that's been submitted to you. You also get this dashboard up here saying the number of virtual miles that you've covered when you go and work with other countries, number of sessions you've delivered, and the number of countries or regions that you've worked in. So it's a bit like a very brief dashboard. So down here is your calendar, and then you just say, look, I'm available. I'm going to say I'm available from 10 in the morning over here. Am I looking at a day that's gone past? I am. So let's try it in this one here. Oh, it's going to have a moment. Yeah, no, skip through. You should have clicked on the calendar and it gives you a box. Just to flag to you this morning, I have found Skype in the classroom a little bit temperamental. Sometimes you do get that with any platform on a day, but today it has been a little bit tricky when I've been prepping for today's session. If you find something a bit weird like that, I would just go back and add your classroom availability in again. But essentially, once you get to the end here, you have the name of your class, you can have the languages you speak in, that's your classroom link. You're going to have a brief summary of where you are, a link to your school if you've popped that in there. In there is all the summary information. If you need to go and edit that again, it's all fine because you click the pencil up here in the corner and you get back to that editing page and you'll get to go through to continue and then back to your calendar, and you can always change your availability over here. So it's no big problem if that's what you need to do. It's pretty straightforward. So that's the overview of setting up Skype in the classroom. Has anyone got any questions about that before I go into how to use Skype in the classroom itself? If you want to unmute your mics, you can. I might just pop back over to the classroom itself. Anybody want to unmute?
I do have a question.
Hello. Yes,
Hi.
go for it.
So when you're setting up the availability, are pupils going to be able to, is it going to be recorded in some way? So if pupils kind of come back to whatever it is that you were doing for reference, or do they have to be in it?
So there are two ways of delivering a Skype in a classroom session. You can deliver it live in real time, and they could be a participant. So you can add a link into, if you were using Teams, for instance, you could add it into their classroom and say that that's part of their learning. That's just a live experience collaboratively. The other one is to record that session when you're delivering it, and then you can make it available. If you're going to make that recording available, you need to be very clear. Doesn't work like Teams, where your recording is in your school or inside what's called your tenancy. It will get recorded and put into the library of lessons for Skype in the classroom. So something to discuss here is how, as a school, you want to use this, and it's probably going to involve a decision from the leadership team that if you are going to show children on webcam in the classroom, you need to have explicit consent from every parent. Also, at the moment, with the way we're working, there are quite a few heated discussions, let's put it, between union guidance and so forth about teachers recording themselves and giving video lessons. So you'll also need to reflect upon, if you're a union member, what your union said or what your school is saying about recording lessons and then making them available in Skype in the classroom.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about the setup? Okay. Yes. Right, if everyone could just mute their mics again, then we'll pop back into the presentation.
Hi.
Oh, have I got a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Does it save alone, or do we have to save it when we put our availability?
So when you pop your availability in, if you decide to join a call, let me go back to my test classroom. So in here where you've got your availability calendar, let's say you accept one of the requests here at the top, you're delivering a session and your availability for this fits in with the session that someone's requested you to deliver. If it's recorded, you can do that alone. It's fine if you're a professional and you're an adult. In a classroom situation, you've often got somebody else with you, be it another adult. I would say if you're doing one of these the first few times you do it, have another adult with you. But if you're recording it, it's also evidence that you've been professional in your manner. Everything you've done is appropriate. So it helps to negate any sort of concerns that parents might have about you suddenly putting an inappropriate image maybe into a presentation or something else. So the video itself records and just makes itself available. You just need to think about the environment, particularly in the distance learning situation you're recording in. Is it nice and quiet? Is it clean as far as the walls behind you haven't got any appropriate posters or pictures and so forth?
Yes, and do I know the availabilities of other teachers who teach in my school?
Yes, you can. If you wanted to, you could set it up so you can see each other's and you can all have accounts, so you can go and look at their calendar. A lot of teachers are obviously teaching, so the availability tends to be down here where I'm showing you now. It starts from 4 o'clock onwards or something once they've got rid of their pupils out of the way, unless they're being released specifically for the purpose, or their classroom is taking part in a whole class Skype activity, and then you might have a middle of the day activity, but normally that's when you get a one-to-one that's pre-arranged between a couple of schools.
Okay.
But you can see the availability is always in these calendars here that I've got on screen now. Does that answer your question, or have I still not answered? I'm happy to talk further if you need to.
Because the problem is we have different subjects, and we have different the same students have different subjects. So I don't want to clash with other colleagues, you know. So how am I going to know when I'm going to give my availability not to clash with science or chemistry?
Okay, so I guess there's two things here. Skype in the classroom is not necessarily for the day-to-day teaching. If you're going to use a Microsoft product for distance learning, I would say use Teams that we're on now. And then you'll know that when you were scheduled in the timetable for school or something, you would have those students available to you to join your session. But you can use Skype in the classroom for that purpose, but it doesn't tend to lend itself quite so well. Another thing to do would be, I'd urge you to, before you start rolling out the use of Skype in the classroom, talk as a staff. So you might have a Teams meeting where you get together as a whole staff, and you drop in the conversation, you've seen Skype in the classroom, you'd like to start using it, and you think it'd be good for other teachers and colleagues to offer the lesson, and how you're going to schedule potential availability of slots during the day. So whether you have a 1 hour block or a 2 hour block, you make sure that you know that your other colleagues are in a particular time slot, and then you don't clash with that time slot.
Thank you.
Okay. So one thing that you need to do when you start to think about using Skype in the classroom is meticulously plan. As teachers, we tend to plan lessons so that we get high quality learning taking place. Well, Skype will only give you high quality learning if you organize your classroom just like you do physically. Maybe that's a seating plan, maybe that's table arrangement. You know, particularly there are certain pupils or students that will not be good combinations, and others that you know will buddy very well or inspire others. Think about how you're going to organize your classroom. So if you were doing this in a classroom situation, you were using Skype in the classroom and it was up there on the interactive whiteboard or the projector, you would say, well, how are we going to organize the room? Very often it's best to either have the tables in one big horseshoe or get the tables out the way, and then give pupils responsibilities and roles to participate in Skype calls. So if you're going to get the most from a Skype situation, you need people with meaningful questions to ask. Somebody else might have the responsibility for recording and capturing information that's shared. Although it's being recorded, you might not want to necessarily waste time going back and watching the recording again. So to do that, there is some resources that will help you with that. And if I click this, it should take me off to a link. And in here, you've got the help of not only organizing your classroom, but you've got themes. So STEM is one that comes up, all about animals, which is this example here. These can be found, I'll show you where they can be found in a moment, but there's a lot of pre-prepared resources. So there's the STEM one. So if I wanted to do STEM Skype in the classroom, I click that button, and then in STEM in the classroom, when it loads up, I've got a pre-prepared set of resources here. This is really for teachers, but it gives you an activity plan, what you might want to do before you do the live activity. I'm not expecting you to read that, but it's quite a comprehensive document. So regardless of your experience with using Skype in the classroom previously, or how many years you've been teaching, it has some useful information, suggestions in there about how you're going to run and use your session. If you want to find those, once you get to Skype in the classroom, let me go back across to the normal classroom. So this is me signed in as my normal Turn It On Educator platform. You go over to resources and you go into For Educators. And then over here, you've got Getting Started with Skype in the Classroom, which is a really good, it's a PowerPoint presentation and a PDF document. It walks you through everything we're covering today. So one of the ways that I would say you can help yourself or you can get support is don't worry about what I'm discussing now too much. You can watch the video back, but it's in there in resources for educators. There are also resources for students, which we'll look at in a moment. You could also then explore how you're going to run events. So in here, if you went in, this talks to you about the different types of events. So if you want to look at on-demand events, so you've got one with Dr. Jane Goodall there. If you want to look at going to meet Microsoft engineers, there's an amazing one here with How to Train Your Dragon Creator. That author discusses via a pre-recorded lesson how the book was crafted, all the ideas. So there's quite a bit of information and pre-prepared resources you could use to start to deliver your lessons. I'm going to go back into the educators section because I jumped out of that. There are also other apps that can link in with Skype in the classroom. So Flipgrid is one of those, but we aren't going to cover that today, but we may after Easter run a Flipgrid session. There's importantly for supporting parents and showing as a school you've thought about using Skype in the classroom at home. There's a section there as a parental guide. So if you're going to roll this out, get those parents on board, give them that guidance. It's all in there and it's pre-written for you. So you don't have to worry about writing anything. You can just go and pick it up. What I was talking about roles is over here for resources to prepare for your Skype calls. So if you click View More, down here you've got the room setup guide, you've got a diagram of how you might want to lay it out, you've got roles to assign students, that in there there's cards for them to have. So even if you're using Teams, you could have them enrolled in a Teams classroom, and then you could send them out their different roles in advance, or we just put their names against each role. And then even if you're doing this virtually, they can still have a role and responsibility. They're just doing it through Teams instead of face to face in your classroom. I think it shows you there the idea of pushing everything back and having a space tends to work best. If you work in a secondary scenario, horseshoe desk arrangement works better. So prepping your classroom and having it in an organization that makes sense is something that's quite key before you get going too far down the line. And then it's really about doing activities and joining a classroom. So the learning opportunities are quite far reaching. One thing that you can do, and this is where I've started off, I asked for the guest speakers. So I was working in a school that was part of an academy chain in the UK, and we had different schools in that academy chain that had teachers with different levels of specialism in different subjects. So what we did is we started to use that specialist knowledge, and we booked those guest speakers or those guest teachers to come and join our classrooms and deliver some lessons. It doesn't have to be the whole lesson. It could be quite a short 20-minute burst, but it just gets that expertise and knowledge into your classroom that you may not have, or that they've got a facility or something that they've been doing that you can't tap into, but you can quickly get that included in the learning for your pupils or students. There's other things that you can do, like you can join events. So something here, and I'll show you where to go to these in a minute, you can join NASA. And this is where I also, as a science teacher, started off. I booked originally a NASA astronaut to speak to the students in my secondary classroom. Here, NASA Aeronautics are running a future flight discussion about streamlining and shape of vehicles to go not only into our atmosphere but outside our atmosphere. And you can go to the guest speaker session, and it gives you a description down here about what to expect. It gives you some Flipgrid activities to follow up, tells you the age range it's suitable for, gives you a description of the subjects you're covering, and then you can request this session. So if you press request this session, you would need to sign in, and hopefully it will quickly realize I am signed in. If you get a period of inactivity in Skype in the classroom, it does make you sign in again, and then you would book the session that you want, the time you'd like it to be in your calendar. And once it's in your calendar, the availability is then checked with the person who's offering the session. Let me pop back over to the session itself. Go back. The availability of the person that's delivering these, which is Steve, he would say, look, no, I'm sorry, I'm already booked all day that day, or no, I can't do 11 to 12 o'clock, but what I could do is the afternoon. And then you negotiate it. You know you're going to get a 30-minute session, and then that person, when you logged into Skype in the classroom, will then become available on the board. Or you could also book them as a video in Teams itself, so you can add them into your Teams classroom so that that could be seen by people in distance learning. So that's one way. Another activity, if I go back in, is to go on virtual field trips. So for people that are on this session from the UK, okay, at the moment we're in lockdown around the world. We're all finding it difficult because of coronavirus. You may not be able to do a visit you planned. Let's say, for instance, you were going to go to Kew Gardens, where you can go on virtual field trips. They've been pre-recorded in some instances. So Kew Gardens has a pre-recorded video where you can take a virtual field trip around Kew Gardens. You can see all the important aspects, such as if any of you been it onto the high platform, it shows you walking across there, looking down on the treetops, up in the canopy, then takes you into the greenhouses, looks at tropical plants versus native plants. The sort of field trips at the moment you think aren't possible. Well, yes, they are, because you can do them through Skype in the classroom. Another one is linked to the NASA one. So it's not available at the moment. It's hidden in the background, but it will become available again. So you could go on to the NASA Space Science program, and there was a way to go to the Intrepid Sea and Air Museum, and you can look around all the shuttles. So you can go on a virtual field trip, and you can go and see a real life shuttle that was used to go into space. You could also see moon landing craft. You can see satellites, all of those sorts of things that you're in the UK, you may not be able to go to America and take your pupils or students to America, but you can book a virtual field trip. That works in the same way of booking. If it was available, and it will become available again, the button's up here, you book it, you put it in your calendar, that sits in your calendar of activities for your class, and away you go. You're delivering your learning again. Another way of working with Skype in the classroom is, I think I've actually said that, collaborating across schools and trusts. And you could use it for professional development. So I've seen this used quite successfully for CPD. Skype in the classroom between a number of schools. So it doesn't have to be just one school to one school. You could do one school to a number of schools. I've seen this used for safeguarding training. I've seen it used for first aid training, but you can get professional development going on where you have inset for staff and you want them all to go and join a Skype in the classroom session. So it doesn't have to be that you've got someone coming to physically stand in front of you. You can use Skype in the classroom for that. That's quite an overlap area between how you would use Teams as well. So it's a decision for you as a school. Is it best to book something with maybe St John's Ambulance or Red Cross for first aid training on Skype in the classroom, or is it better to just get them on a call through a team? You could also use it for joining staff meetings remotely. It's another overlap area between Skype in the classroom and Skype and also Teams meetings. So where you tend to go towards the Skype in the classroom is where you're maybe doing a staff meeting across an academy trust and you've got multiple schools all joining in. It lends itself to that really well. Just popping back to the main interface itself. If you ever want to get back to the beginning of where we joined, hit the button up there where it says Skype in the classroom preview, and you'll be back on the landing page. You've also got the quick links to all the important key resources there, but don't forget you've got the resources there. I said we go back to resources for students. Well, they're in there too. If you do decide to be a guest speaker, there's resources there for you at the same time. They've been bunched or themed as far as resources are concerned, and they're down there at the bottom, but let's go back to students. So they do have, and it's more of a primary thing than a secondary thing, but they can have a Skype in the classroom passport. They gradually get stamps and stickers as they have different roles and activities, or they undertake different things such as a field trip, or they're an event, or maybe their classroom delivers a lesson. So pupils can take ownership of the learning too. They can deliver a lesson to other pupils in another classroom. It doesn't have to be adult led. You could also then get quick access to these on-demand events. Normally they're the ones that are particularly high profile at a time. If you wish to give out certificates for your classroom, they're in there, but they can also download their own certificates. There's a nice little bingo activity. Again, that's more primary focus than secondary. And then you've got the event resources for things there, such as the SDGs resources, but we'll cover those more at another session. For the educators, I'm just going to pop back because I showed you some of the resources in there, but there are a few more. So if you scroll down, the activity plan session here is really useful. When you go down, I touched on the STEM one, but there's varying amounts of content depending on which one you go into. The STEM one's got quite a bit, but they haven't always got the same amount. Don't be phased there. You saw it flashed, it went to OneDrive. All it's doing is it's making that plan available through OneDrive. Sometimes you get this sort of text document. Other times you get a PowerPoint presentation. Sometimes you'll get a video. It just depends on the content that's been placed into the library there. Popping back over to the presentation. Quickly flick through those. So as far as support materials are available for after this session, there is something called MEC, the Microsoft Education Center, and the MEC will eventually have Skype in the classroom resources and courses that you can sit as a professional to get accreditation from Microsoft. So you get certificates and you also get what's called MEC points. Currently, because this is in preview development, there aren't any courses on the MEC, but they will be coming soon. So keep checking back there. If you need to go to the Microsoft Education Center, you just need to sign in with your school account and then you can undertake courses and you can get rewards for it. And also you could use that as your own professional development. And then the main resources are what I've just shown you. The link is there in this presentation, but the introduction guide, which is amazing, it covers everything I've done today. So don't panic if you can't remember what I've said. Video to watch back. You can also go and watch the introduction guide. Then you've got the activity plans where I was just showing you about STEM and animals, but you've also got the parental home learning resources. If you're going to take this forwards, I would say you've got two main tasks. You could create your class one notebook and you can put a session in there, but also you can join a Skype in the classroom session. For that point, I'm going to stop and throw questions open because I've shown you everything you need to get started. as I said at the beginning, I can't emphasize enough, go and explore. Exploration, digging around, having a rummage to see what's in there, see what's on offer. Does it fit in with what you're going to be teaching next term? Or maybe you've got a topic if you're primary, or maybe you're teaching a particular unit if you're a secondary school. Find what fits. Don't try and force it to fit. So if something doesn't feel natural at the time, maybe use it for another session or another term. I am going to stop screen sharing at that point, but I am staying here and I'll be happy to answer any calls. So I'll check the form where you've been submitting your questions. I'll also offer that you can unmute your mics and you can talk to me. So now is the time I'm going to throw it over to you. Okay, you must be all really shy because I've had no questions on the Microsoft form.
I do have a question. I just didn't want to go first.
Go on, be brave.
So I'm just thinking, our school hasn't started any kind of online learning yet. We're wanting to make sure everything's in place before we do it and can be consistent across the board. And I'm just thinking about some of the things you mentioned about safeguarding, particularly if you were to have a live classroom, and whether or not you've got any experience of more practical rules that have worked. So, for example, all the children have your mics off, whether they hold questions on a whiteboard or something, and any practical pointers about cameras on, cameras off, etc.
Yeah, no problem. So in my experience, I've normally invited them to a Skype in the classroom session because I'm using Teams, and I appreciate you haven't got down that route yet, but you could equally email them a link to the Skype in the classroom session if they've got internal email. If they haven't got that and you're using some other type of platform such as Seesaw or maybe using Tapestry, you can send sessions out like that. I would emphasize on there and in advance that parental engagement and also that parental reassurance element. Use the resources that have been prepped for Skype in the classroom. It allays quite a few fears that parents often have about their child being involved in a session. But I would say prepare a class guide covering the sorts of areas you have just discussed. It's all those common sense things like if you are in a Teams call or you're in a Skype in the classroom session, we expect if you're a pupil to have your mic on mute unless you're going to be asking us a question. Usually that's just because you want to safeguard against them saying something that shouldn't be heard by others, but also there's going to be a lot of activity going around at home and they might have another sibling in the background or parents are trying to work or whatever's happening, and it detracts from the learning that's going on as well. The other thing is, mics off. They shouldn't have mics on. They don't need to switch mics on to participate. They might need, cameras off and switch mics on when they do need to participate. They don't need to have cameras on to participate, but they do need a mic on to ask a question or be involved at a certain point, particularly if you've had a role given to them and they're maybe asking a pre-prepared question. So leading up to one of these events, what I would normally do in the way I've managed it before, so they're focused and they're ready with their question, is we discuss. We're going to be speaking to a NASA astronaut today. Maybe you booked that space flight session. I would have some topic work in a primary scenario. We've gone away. We've looked at different space vehicles, be it traditional shuttles, spacecrafts. Maybe we're looking at things like the New Virgin one where you're going to go in and you're going to skim the atmosphere in space. And maybe we're going to ask one pupil talking about aerodynamics, another pupil's talking about the materials that are used to construct the shuttle. Another person might be talking about what the astronaut might feel like emotionally going through this. So we're covering all aspects, but then they're focused. So the only time they unmute their mic, they've got a purposeful reason to do so. And then it doesn't mean that they're unmuting and talking over each other and it becomes really loud or they're hearing something they shouldn't from another person. We haven't produced an official guide. I would say that the parental guides are the best thing to start with, and then each school has normally produced their own rules or expectations or Skype in the classroom etiquette based on the way they want to use it.
Hi. To make a class on Teams or on Skype, I have to input the emails to start the group.
Yeah, if you're going to make either a Google Classroom or you're going to make a Microsoft Team, you need to have your pupils with email addresses. There's certain safety aspects around that, such as you would need to ensure that they couldn't just email everyone. Some schools disable email altogether. Some schools allow pupils to email each other within a year group. That's a school decision. Once you've got them set up, you then add them into your Google Classroom and make them a member, or you add them to the Microsoft Team Classroom and make them a member. And then there's lots of features in there you can use to involve them in links to get to Skype in the classroom.
Okay.
If you're interested in that, we have covered in the last 2 weeks a lot of previous webinars around how to set those up, practical application of them, so you could always get those webinars too.
2 weeks more?
Sorry, say that again?
Next 2 weeks?
The previous 2 weeks, we've been covering that. So we've already delivered those sessions, but they're just like today,
yes,
they're a recorded webinar, so you can always watch them back.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from people on the call?
Hi, I might have missed this at the beginning because I was a few minutes late joining, but is there a cost involved?
No, you're fine. I think I did mention it very early doors, so no problem at all. As long as you've got a school Office 365 account and your school uses Office 365, there is no cost. As I said, if you're a G Suite school, you would need a paid Office 365 account to get access to Skype in the classroom, or what's called an MSA account. So as long as you're an Office 365 school and that's what you use, no, there's no additional cost to this, or using any of the content in Skype in the classroom. There's no cost to book someone. People that are involved in Skype in the classroom are giving their time for free. So it's a resource that doesn't have any additional hidden costs.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm just going to check the chat on the side. We promote the forms link again. No other questions there. I'm just going to check back to the form. Anyone else got anything they'd like to ask? I've had no other questions come in on the Microsoft form. Okay, if everyone's quite happy, then I will bid you all farewell for today's session. Just to make you aware of what we're going to be doing as a company, we feel that there's a lot of benefit to schools in having these sessions, so we are going to continue these after Easter. So if you're joining us from outside the UK, we're about to have 2 weeks Easter break for the Easter holidays. I appreciate that with key worker opening in schools, some schools and some staff are still working through the Easter break because they've got school open for provision for children. We will still be around as Turn It On. We're not going anywhere. You can still contact us, but what we won't be doing is any of the webinar sessions. But the first Monday back after Easter, we will have another session available, and we're going to alternate between Microsoft and Office 365 sessions and Google G Suite sessions, and we'll have a program of events set. We're going to draw those up next week and we'll start advertising those so you can sign up in advance. So our first session back will be Monday the 20th of April. Again, these will continue to be free webinars. We'd like as many people as possible to be involved, whether you're here as a Turn It On consultant or whether you're here as a school. We'll focus on other aspects of Office 365 or G Suite, and we'll look at how they can have impact with distance learning. But don't forget, what you're learning now also is very relevant when you go back to school. So all these skills that you're accumulating are going to be quite vital to using in your classroom when you get back to real life. I just want to say thank you to everyone that's joined us today. I really appreciate your time. I know it's not always easy to find the time at home to join these sessions. I will remain on the session a little bit in case anyone wants to ask a question as people are dropping off. But otherwise, have a safe rest of the day. Enjoy the holidays if you're in the UK, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks very much.